The last piece we're going to put on the deck is the aft ladderway, and the coamings are made up exactly as they were, so I'm not going to go through this again. The only issue is really working out the rebate on the side, so we'll just quickly go through that. And we have scored it out using the caliper, and then just so that I see it, because I do need my glasses, we're just going to have this little protractor that I use, and this is really just to give me a guide when I go on the sander that I know I'm sanding it correctly. So these marks were actually put there. This is 2 inches inside, and the bottom is 3 inches, which is 0.0625. Again, just to guide me. Now onto the sander. Once the sides are done, we now need to sand the camber into the piece. The last time we made up this recess, we added a little piece to the bottom of the frame. This time we left it full frame and cut the recess on the mill. Why? Just to show you that it can be done. Now we take out the chisels and clean up the 4 corners, square them off. Again, this was quite easy, nice sharp chisels. Recently sharpened on my new Veritas sanding system. Well, we're finally getting to start the upper deck planking, and we're going to start with the center line plank, or sometimes referred to as a king plank. And we've cut off some stock. We're using coffee wood, again a very light wood, and we're going to simulate the caulking using pencil, not black paper, as David and perhaps Greg suggests. We're cutting each oversized so that we have room to adjust as we do the final fit. The next thing is really to set up the center line. So again, we're going to go back and pull a line from the center, from the stem to the stern. Although we could take exact measurements, in building and construction, there's a term called as-built, and that's what we're doing here. The next job, having put the king plank in, is to put in the waterway. So it starts at the stern, comes up, there's a scarf joint here, and it goes along the center, another scarf joint, then finally a fourth scarf joint, and then up into the bow you have two other scarf joints. In the lower deck, this was the typical edge treatment so that we didn't have the point sticking out to break. There are three boards that actually recess into the waterway plank, so that's going to be interesting. In the case of when I looked at Greg's book 3, since this was all covered up, I'm not sure he did this, at least you don't see it in the book. And the only other piece that we need to realize is I did not put this piece of the center plank in because the bow waterway piece at the front had to be installed first. So what we're going to do is cut this out of a piece of, we're not going to bend this, cut this out of a solid piece of 4-inch, and then we're going to shape in the recess down, because it goes from 4 inches on the edge of the skirtering down to 3 inches, which is the thickness of the deck planks. The other thing we're going to do is, when I did the lower deck, I didn't taper all the back pieces. In fact, from the binding strakes, I went straight back. You can clearly see that these are tapered down. So I'm going to start the taper probably from the aft hatch, so that you get, again, a nice clean view of everything looking ordered and balanced. We're in the outside shop, and as you can see, I have quite a nice collection of wood, all sorts of different hardwoods, tropical hardwoods, a lot of coffee wood, lots of juniper, and I have a friend who was rehabilitating an old coffee plantation, and so I was able to get some wonderful old coffee trees. So I have a collection of coffee wood that's gonna keep me in good stead. And my friend Hatu Pidak, who has, he's actually a vet, but his hobby is tree farming, is about to deliver a whole stack of juniper, which is this beautiful hardwood that's available in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's probably my lifetime supply of juniper. So we're gonna just cut out a few wide pieces of 4-inch stock. I use the old Proxon, and get it dimensioned down on the old Priac thickness sander, and we can do the front and the back. The pieces in the center will tend to be, I probably could bend them rather than have to cut them in shape. I'm just taking in front because I know some of my friends are watching this and said, "Oh, Mr. Kenny, that's very unsafe practice. It's possible to get kickback." Well, they're correct. It's possible to get kickback. So I'm standing to the left, so if in fact the piece does fly out, it's not going to hit me. The second thing I do is, as I get through, probably about this much, so I still have about 3 inches to go, I'll hold the two pieces and pull them through the side. And that just works fine and is a safe way of cutting these big fat planks. The problem we have is, I found it when I'm cutting very thin pieces, to get a push stick that will fit between here. I've actually had more problems with it being eaten by the blade than doing it this way. So that's my way of doing it. We're going to use this joggle stick I made up to work out what the shape is. So the joggle stick is a simple form with a series of cuts in it. Doesn't matter where you put the point. All you're doing is following the shape. And of course the point is giving you, it's reaching out to the edge of the piece. We're trying to determine the shape. I'm sorry my hands are in the way, but all it's doing is we're placing the joggle stick randomly on a piece of paper and then tracing out, trying to establish, tracing out from a point, which the point touches the inside edge of the model. And when we go on, we can transfer that and we will be able to establish the point on another piece of paper. We don't want that piece of paper to move. The smaller the joggle stick is, the easier it is going to be to be able to place the joggle stick inside the model. It doesn't matter where you put it on the piece of paper we have. It just mustn't move. Right. So we have a series of marks. Now we just come on a piece of paper and start lining up the joggle stick. And what we're trying to do is just get a series of marks. We're just really trying to get the point. Right. So now we have a series of marks, and all we want to do now is to line those points up. And we've just made a perfect template of the inward shape of our model. So that's almost perfect. So after a little bit of work, a little bit of cleaning up, we have a perfect fit. So this is the part we're trying to make. It's a 3-inch plank on the deck, and at this point here it's 4 inches. The skirting is 3 inches, so we have literally about a 1-inch taper that comes from the 4-inch down to the 3-inch. Now I'm going to ignore this joint that's at an angle. I'm going to cut it so that it's absolutely flat to the bottom or shape of the beam. And the straightforward pieces like this are quite easy to do. I don't use a shaper to start with. I actually take the plank, which is 12 inches. The book says it can be 10 inches. I've decided to work with 12 inches. And simply put it on the preac and cut a groove. So this is leaving me with 4 inches on this side. And I take that groove down to 3 inches. You might or may not be able to see it. So here we're at 4, here we're at 3. And then I'll just open up the groove and then put a scraper and pull it through to get the final finish. So doing the straight pieces is really very simple. In the case of the curved pieces at the bow, this is really very difficult. And I've tried scraping. It just makes a mess of the piece. In addition to which, you have grain issues, that the grain is running the correct way here, but up here, the grain is at an angle. So when I pull the scraper along, it really is not the ideal way to scrape it. Works pretty good on this side, but doesn't work well here. So I tried to figure it out and couldn't, and then I wrote Greg, and he says that what he would do is literally add a piece to add the 1-inch ridge here, and then sand the taper down. So that's what we're going to do. So here is the 12-inch wide, 4-inch thick piece. We've set the blade to cut a groove that will leave 3 inches, and we're just going to run it through. That is a pretty good reference to what that is here. And then we take to just cut the angle down. We can, at this point in time, simply cut it very slightly. I wouldn't do it more than that. And the final finish will come when the scuttering is placed on it. So this is the final product that can be installed on the model. With the curved piece in the bow, it's a little more problematic. So we're going to bend a strip, which we're going to stick onto the 3-inch waterway. That will give it that ridge, and then sand and clean it up. Now we're doing the same thing on the other side, and in the next video we'll look at the actual installation of these waterways. So see you next time, and keep modeling.